Yo, what's up? I'm KallaTheYapper, and I'm back with another reaction. Today, on this lovely Saturday afternoon, I'm going to react to this video made by Zone, which was a day old, called "This Ending is a Beautiful Mess That Left Me Feeling Conflicted." And I'm gonna say this, I felt the same way. Literally, I literally just finished playing this story. I just finished playing it. As we like the beginning of the story for version 3.3, it was fine. The Hiyuki segue, I enjoyed it. Like, yeah, I was calling Hiyuki out her name and all the other shit. Yeah, 'cause I was being funny, I was being cheeky, right? And then I continued being a little bit like that throughout like the beginning of like chapter 3 story, because chapter 3 story, or chapter 3 act 5, I think that's what, yeah, act 5, right? It was doing okay, it was doing good. I didn't really feel like there was an issue with anything, right? Nothing felt to me like something was mixing. Everything felt like it was clicking its dots, point, boom, boom, all that crazy shit, right? But then once we got to the latter half of Act 5, it started losing me entirely. I was like, wait, why does it feel like something missing here? Why are we jumping into boss fights immediately? Why are we not building up Dina? Why is Dina not getting a lot of more screen time than this? Especially if she's supposed to be also the premier character of version 3.3 story, right? Because we only got a lot about Hiyuki. Are we going to get more information related to Dina as a segue? If so, why are we waiting until the latter half? Because Withering Waves loves doing this thing where it's like, oh, we're going to release the first half of the story here, and then you're going to get the second half later. But the thing is, I'm already like 2 weeks behind everyone else playing this fucking story. I'm about 2 weeks behind, I'm pretty sure, right? So I should already be at this halfway point. I should already got a notification that, oh, there's more story to tell. And if there isn't more the story to tell, and I already played the segue story for Hiyuki part 1 and 2, and chapter 3 and act 5 as well, then it's like, okay, why in the hell? They are building up Dina. Dina appeared in the story, but she didn't really do anything outside of having her crash outs and being manipulated by the Grand Architect. But like, I felt like her character should have been built up more before this moment, so it can feel more grand, feel more epic, feel more like satisfying to see her get saved by our main character and Hiyuki, right? But it didn't feel that way to me, and I felt that way continuing on after that fact into the boss fight with the Aleph one, which was so crazy. Nigga got tossed to the other side of the fucking universe, apparently. Or not apparently, that's what happened. The Extra Strider has the power to toss the fucking Thermodian to the other side of the cosmos. And it's like, bruh, at this point, it felt like they just gave that damn thing the ability to do that just to justify how powerful it is, or to justify the boss fight, honestly. Anyway, I think I'm saying a lot at the beginning. I need to just let this video play so we can get a take to see what how he feel about this. Because Vincent, he did appear at the latter end, or like halfway through my live stream when I was going through my crash outs, being like, hold on, something not right here. Something feel like is missing, right? So we gonna get into this, and I got my tab open for my playthrough around, because it was around here I started going crazy. So we gonna save that for later. Anyway, let's begin.
Understood the story and themes 3.3.
Oh, wait a minute, something not right. Hold up. Is it not plugged in?
Was going for my brain couldn't help but trigger
Oh,
some
wait a
alarm
minute.
bells whenever it came to 3 of the core story.
Sorry, one of my earphones for my headset is broke, so I thought I couldn't hear anything. No, the volume's fine. It's fine, it's good.
Withering Waves 3.3, the anniversary patch, as well as what seems to be the epic conclusion of the Lahai Roy arc. It's still not 100% over, as part 2 of this patch is still not out, but I think there's enough in part 1 to talk about. And look, there's no secret that if you followed my live streams while playing the story, follow me on YouTube and Twitch for live reactions to games, gachas, and more, there were some moments where I felt less than enthusiastic about what I was shown on screen. While I completely understood the story and themes 3.3 was going for, my brain couldn't help but trigger some alarm bells whenever it came to 3 of the core story beats. Yes, in case it wasn't obvious from the start, this video will contain heavy spoilers for 3.3, so only watch if you've already finished the story. The scenes in questions are the ones where Amith gave Rover her cassette, then the part where Amith gets the map coordinates from the victims of Voidstorms, and lastly the part where the Exostrider hurls a spear at Aleph 1. I'll be talking about the
Okay, so he's touching on things completely different, except for the last part, than where I was coming from. Because personally, I felt like the cassette tape thing, and like mapping out the coordinates within Aleph One, I felt like that part was like it was solid. But maybe there's something I missed that he was able to notice that I missed. You feel me? So let's see.
about these scenes specifically and why they pose a problem to the overall narrative taking place in La Roy. But before I do that, I want to make a shout out to someone who left a comment on my livestream. Puckov has made a very interesting point, stating that I may have actually misunderstood the concept of frequency dissolution. And you know what? Fair point. It's true that dissolution can mean the decay, decomposition, and the passing away of a physical or abstract entity, but it can also mean the process of something dissolving. For example, think of how you add a sugar cube to your coffee. The sugar cube ceases to exist, but the sugar doesn't just get deleted from existence. It now exists in the form of sweetened coffee, and a proof of that is you being able to taste it. So what if the same is applicable to withering waves? What if frequencies are simply dissolved into void space, broken down to their most basic form? This could potentially prove that my own theory and understanding are wrong when it comes to the scene where Amith receives the coordinates from the Voidstorm victims. Basically, this one comment changed the direction I wanted to take this video in. Rather than make a video where I present my theory and substantiate it with evidence from the game, I am going to try to prove my own theory wrong. And to be clear, my theory is that all of the victims of the Voidstorm should not have existed in this scene due to the way that void space was presented to us. But before we get into the...
Now, that person's comment is rather interesting. I do think it is interesting. But I think this confusion does come from the fact that Withering Waves, again, this goes back to the devs for Withering Waves, not doing proper setup for fucking concepts that they're only just now introducing, and then they'll flip-flop its usage or how they present it, right? Because think about it. They did this before with when erased herself from existence, right? And then we had to go through that whole thing of anchoring to bring her back. But then when Galbrena came out, right, with the whole anchoring concept that we had to do for Galbrena as well, but instead we didn't do it to bring Galbrena back. We was actually doing it in reverse, because Galbrena was already here. There was nothing wrong with Galbrena during that moment of the story. I don't think there was anything wrong with her, but like, she wasn't like some person that was erased from existence and we had to forge back together. So they kind of flopped the anchoring concept to like ass pull it for Galbrena. I can't remember what exactly the situation Galbrena was in for them to even need to do the anchoring thing. I may have to go back and rewatch the scene for myself, unless someone who plays Withering Waves and watches my content can explain to me in the simplest terms of what happened for her to need to be anchored back into existence. But like, you see what I'm saying, right? They keep doing this thing where they'll introduce a concept and then they'll flip flop it and not keep it consistent for what they're presenting to us, right? So that they can use it whatever fucking type of way they want later on, right? And that's always been a problem for Withering Waves when it comes down to this lore, setting up the rules for their story. Because niggas got the power to bend reality in this fucking game, for crying out loud. At this point, there's no boundary line for where power stops at in this world. It can be anything and everything.
To the lore, if you enjoy these kinds of story and world building breakdowns, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like and subscribed. It helps the channel a lot and it lets me keep making more videos like this. Alright now, I think that instead of going straight into the nitty gritty of disproving my theory, I want to take a moment to talk about what I did enjoy in 3.3. As usual, Wua's visuals are stunning. The Exostrider scenes were impactful. You could definitely feel the massive weight behind it as it woke up from its slumber. The music was stellar simply because it was able to get my adrenaline pumping regardless of how bummed I may have felt during my stream. And the climactic ending knew exactly what kind of emotional high it wanted.
Yeah, it did. Everything he's saying is true. However, here comes the but part. And the but part, I already agree with based off of my own interaction. Because when I was going through these moments, something felt off. It felt completely off. It no longer felt like this is a battle against some cosmic threat. It felt like it turned into a battle against someone else who wanted to copy the Exostrider and gain power from it to be this super powerful individual. That's what it felt like during the boss fight, at least for me personally. Like, literally, if you were to strip the context of everything story-wise relate to that boss fight against the Exostrider, this Gundam fight we had, if you strip the context entirely and only knew what I told you, which was bullshit, which is bullshit, a lie, basically, which is, oh, someone else was piloting the other mech and fighting against us because they wanted to be powerful. If I were to tell that to anyone who's never played Wuthering Waves and only saw that cutscene, they would believe me off the spot because they have no reason to believe, especially with the presentation of the fight that we got. Nothing at all like presents itself as like this is some cosmic level battle that we're facing, this cosmic horror level threat, right? In comparison, for niggas who play Honkai Star Rail, right, we're dealing with cosmic level threats all the time. Literally, every Lord Ravager we fought is a cosmic level threat. Iron Tomb was the most recent cosmic level threat we faced. And guess what Iron Tomb did? Better yet, I better show you instead of talking. My talking can only do so much. Don't worry, I got y'all. Let's go ahead and get this shit found. Okay. Star Rail. Oh, I spelled that wrong. Hold up, let's rewind. Spelled that fucking wrong. Ah, shit, I hit some other button that put, no, I tapped into a video. Back up. I hate the fact that this shit is doing this to me right now. Let's do this again. Honkai Star Rail Iron Tomb boss. Let me click this. This was 6 months ago, by the way. Hey, let me. I want to click this because this is gonna have the scene I want to show. That really emphasized. Actually, I'm gonna play just a little bit of this because these cutscenes actually emphasize the feeling of we were facing a cosmic level threat in comparison to what we just did for Wuthering Waves. Right? Let's play this. You see that? You see the presentation of that? It's ginormous. It's otherworldly. Let's continue. It has aura. If we want to use that as a as a barometer to like judge if something is cool, it has like if it's good or something, or whatever the fuck, right? Anyway, let's continue.
Bear witness, monarch of myriad machines, my ridiculous creation. The instant in your calculations bears the name destruction.
You see this? Look how many niggas had to roll up on Iron Tomb, the cosmic level threat. This battle felt grand. It felt like more than just the world was at stake. It felt like the cosmos was at stake, which technically it was, right? This is what I was expecting from the boss fight with Aleph 1, right? Because I really wanted to know, how are we going to defeat Aleph 1? How are we really going to defeat this Thenodian and put it in the dirt? How? It's a fucking black hole, for crying out loud. How are we going to defeat it? Right? That was my thought process.
Who said you could speak, Senior? Watch closely. See how your chaos ends at the hands of your juniors.
Look at these little pew-pew blasts they're doing on Iron Tomb. It's doing nothing! It's weak! It's not enough! You see how big this is?
Don't get too worked up. Take a deep breath.
What's even better, it had a physical form we could fight. And honestly, I feel like this physical form is way better than fucking Aleph 1 just copying the Extra Strider's form with a little slight design changes and being like, okay, now fight me, nigga. Like, no.
There's not a trace of life in that armor shell.
We're not gonna lose to a hollow husk, right?
Look how unique this looks. Look how it stands out. This is Iron Tomb, for crying out loud. It's more smaller humanoid avatar to use. It's got two bodies. It's big body and it's small body. You feel me? And even when we first meet Iron Tomb, before the boss fight actually starts, Iron Tomb starts talking mad shit. Hold on, let's play this a little bit.
Funeral.
Look at Iron Tomb.
Iron Tomb's body has descended.
Look at what the Iron Tomb says right here. He's talking gibberish right now. Watch.
Don't worry about what happens out here. Interfere with it as much as you can.
Strain, cosmic armies, be ready to resist me. Look, it's farming aura before the boss fight actually begins.
What a twisted giant. It must be supported by this embodiment of hatred.
How tragic. A puppet without a heart cannot fool even itself.
And then the boss fight begins. But let me show you the real kicker of this entire boss fight. That really was like, oh shit, we're getting our asses handed to us right now. When this nigga started cheating and then locked down the fucking skill point button, so now we couldn't even fucking use our skill points. This nigga started cheating hardcore. Hold up, let me scoop up to right here. I know I haven't gotten deep into Vincent's video, but I just want to paint this picture for you for my expectation for Aleph 1, that people were gassing up to high heaven and comparing it to Iron Tomb and why Iron Tomb is better. It was better done across the fucking board.
A debate. The argument about the Prime Mover is only about to begin.
Gods, kings, never knew revelation, the final revelation. The erudition's grand annihilation. Right? Niggas lock down the skill points just so he can fucking cheat. So that he can clap us with his diabolical move. Hold up, let me play this. You see this diabolical ult? Oh my gosh! He wiped us out, nigga! This is the type of shit I was expecting from Aleph 1. I was expecting devastation on the other side of the Strider Gate. Anyway, let's keep playing.
The fourth instant of the cosmos is the coronation of Iron Tomb.
I'm gonna keep playing this just a little more. Just a little more.
The conclusion is irrefutable. The right side of the equation, the erudition, falls silent. In 13 heartbeats, they will begin recalculating the universe, with destruction as the only solution.
Okay, so you can see where my expectations were when it came out to Aleph 1, basically. Let's continue this video.
What I enjoyed the most by far was Hiyuki and her scene in Honami dealing with her own duty as the Miko, as well as dealing with her failures. Hiyuki is one of, if not the most beautiful character in Wuthering Waves. She is the only woman I've ever looked at and felt a primal need to call her enchanting to describe how beautiful she is, and that's saying something coming from me. I've also
Interesting. She evoked that much out of you? You know, I'm not even gonna blame you. I can see her enchantingness. That's not even a word, by the way. I'm pretty sure that's not a word. But anyway, I can understand the description. Cause like I still got Wuthering Waves open. I'm looking at Hiyuki's character banner right now. She looks very enchanting, right? Granted, I'm probably like mad indifferent towards her. I mean, the only thing that impressed me the most about her character design was the fact that whether or not they were going to show her ass, which they technically did. If you sprint with the character against the wall, you're going to notice it. Anyway, outside of that Gunnar perspective, let's continue.
I've also enjoyed Denia's boss fight, and of course this doesn't even need mentioning, but I'm happy that Amith is back. The final scene where Rover and Amith had their heart-to-heart actually made me slightly emotional, and I'm very happy to have been proven right about the theory I had during 3.1, where I predicted that Amith is not stuck in the bootstrap paradox.
Ooh, wait a minute. I don't know when this scene happened. I can't remember if I missed the scene or not. If this was an extra scene, I'll make sure to play this once the second half of the 3.3 story drops.
That she still had a way out. So no, this is not a case where I think 3.3 had nothing good in it. It absolutely did. My issue is that the parts I liked emotionally kept running into questions the world building didn't answer clearly enough. Anyway, let's get back to disproving my theory. To do that, we're going to have to go back to the fundamentals and understand what frequency is. Don't worry, I'll keep it short. To summarize, because of the wave-worn phenomena that has been affecting Solaris 3, everything is now made up of frequency. The birds, the trees, water, food, the technology that we use, even people are made up of frequencies. It is the building block of reality itself. Think of it like atoms in the real world. One of the biggest issues with this, and one that I've already criticized quite a few times, is that frequency is one of the most overused terms in Wuthering Waves, and this is pretty much the reason why. Based on their own world building, it's correct to call everything a frequency. That makes sense. But the problem is, we've repeatedly seen throughout the game's story that frequency was used to refer to many things. It was used to refer to signals, echoes of the past, illusions, ghosts, spirits, data, minds, even souls at one point. Even in 3.3, there is...
That is true. And 100%, I can see how someone would run with the logic of, okay, so if frequency is everything, right? I can understand why someone would come down to that thought process, knowing that they've used this term very loosely across the board for damn near everything.
There is a spirits, data, minds, even souls at one point. Even in 3.3, there is a cutscene where a scientist is commenting on the Exostrider's loss of frequency during battle, obviously referring to something akin to its functionality or even life science. But even if this is correct and completely fits the world building, it still makes it very confusing for the audience to navigate, because you'd have to infer what kind of frequency we're talking about at any given moment. Even in cases when we have the visual representation of a translucent humanoid silhouette, you're still going to have trouble figuring out whether these are illusions, echoes of the past, or actual restless souls. But confusion aside, that's what frequency is. It's everything. If that
to make a comparison, right? I'm gonna make a comparison to Genshin Impact. Frequency in Genshin Impact would essentially be like, because since souls are connected to this frequency thing for Withering Waves, it'd essentially be like the ley line system in Genshin Impact, right? That's kind of what frequencies are. It's either like a mixture between the ley lines, or like the elemental powers that exist in Genshin Impact's world as a baseline because it's fundamental, right? Things of that nature. That's kind of what frequency would be. Guys, I feel like the ley line point was the most accurate one, honestly. Unless I'm wrong, someone else can make a better comparison to me.
But confusion aside, that's what frequency is. It's everything. If that's the case, then what about Amith? She is a digital ghost now and is capable of traversing void space freely and without fear. If, as we've established before, frequency is everything, then is Amith's digital ghost form also a frequency? Well, the answer seems to be yes. In her lore entries, she comments on her existence as a digital ghost and how she comes to the conclusion that humanity's essence is frequency given what she had become. This is also corroborated by how frequencies have been presented in the game's past. Alright, so far, so good. Now, we need to figure out if frequencies can exist within void space, and at an initial glance, the answer to that would be a resounding...
I'm not gonna lie, this whole thing of Amith swimming like she's a fucking fish, and so I was like, come on bro, we ain't gotta do all that. Look, I understand trying to flex every nook and cranny she got going on here. I get it. But we ain't got to be sitting here swimming like a fish. Just hover forward, girl.
If frequencies can exist within void space, and at an initial glance, the answer to that would be a resounding yes. After all,
it's crazy how thick
was
Amith
able
is.
To find Rover's frequency just sitting there, and Amith's own existence as a digital ghost, which we also assume to be some form of frequency-based existence, doesn't seem to be affected by void space. There's also the remains of the Exostrider and the communication satellite that Amy found. So if everything is made up of frequencies and these things can exist within void space, then yes, the theory
Hold on, let me go back.
is made up of frequencies and these things can exist within void space, then yes, the theory holds.
Hold on, let's go back. Let's go back a little more. Back to the satellite thing.
Remains of the Exostrider and the communication satellite.
I was so disappointed with the communication satellite thing because I genuinely thought, because they didn't express that this shit is from Lahiroi or from Solaris. They never expressed that. They were like, oh, she found this satellite here. She even said that it was a creation built by the same makers of the Exostriders, right? But like for 3.3 story, they painted as if the satellites, that satellite that Amos found in void space, did not belong to the people who made the Exostrider, but instead they painted it out to be like something that the explorers from Solaris made that fucking satellite. And they have brought back the fucking sound that it recorded in space, which, technically speaking, makes no fucking sense because sound cannot travel in space. At best, if there was a sound in space, it would come off as a muffle, like a oomph. But even then, that's like you can only base that on like how movies depicted sound in space being dead. There's no such thing, right? It's silence. It's cold and dead silence. Which makes outer space even more terrifying when you think about it. That means some eldritch horror type creature could roll up behind you. Imagine you're an astronaut flying through space on your little space pod or whatever the fuck, right? Or you're just doing maintenance work on the satellite. And then some alien creature just rolls up behind you, all silent, all inconspicuous. You can't even hear it behind you. The only way you'll catch sight of it is if you turn around or a part of its body comes into your line of sight and you're like, huh, what the fuck is that? And you turn around and then boom, there it is in your face. Right? But enough of that part. But like, yeah, because it really sucks that they were like, oh, look at this, listen to this white noise that that the fucking satellite captured as it explored different galaxies. I would have preferred to hear something horrific. I would have preferred to hear something like chatter from different civilizations that's out there, or even chatter that belongs to whatever planet or civilization that the rover came from. I would have preferred that than hearing some bland noise that does nothing but supposed to symbolize, oh, look, this is what the explorers captured in their fucking the satellite captured in its fucking recording, whatever the fuck. Like, bruh, come on. We could have got so much more. And it should have stayed consistent. Why the fuck did they turn it into like, oh, the fucking the people from Lahiroi made the fucking satellite and not the people from Rover's home planet or home world, right? Because people from Lahiroi didn't create the fucking Exostrider. The Exostrider existed way before the people of Lahiroi even existed, for crying out loud. But enough of that point. Let's continue.
Satellite that Amy found. So if everything is made up of frequencies and these things can exist within void space, then yes, the theory holds. But here's when things get a little complicated. We know that while Amy was in possession of Rover's frequency, the void matter corrupted it in her moment of weakness and birthed Sigillum, using Amy's own fears as its motivation. This tells us that while void space allows for the existence of frequencies, it still has a corrupting effect on them. Whether this corrupting effect takes place quickly or slowly, we can't really tell, as even Amy herself doesn't know how much time Rover's frequency has been stuck in void space. It's also worth noting that while Amy is still a frequency, she is immune to void space. This might have something to do with her unique circumstances, how she became a digital ghost while trying to wake up the Exostrider, or it might be because she's the Exostrider synchronist, granting her some form of protection. What we can infer, however, is that the Exostrider remains and the communication satellite are potentially just as old, if not older, than Rover's frequency, and they have not suffered the corrupting effect. This leads me to question why. Why is it that even though everything is made up of frequencies, why does void space seem to not corrupt these pieces of technology? The only conclusion that I can come to is that not all frequencies are created equal. I mean, after all, these pieces of technology were also swallowed up by Aleph-1, and they have not gone through the same dissolution effect that humans seem to go through. They haven't been broken down to their most basic form. Instead, they're for the most part whole. The communication satellite was even functional enough for Amy to find Rover's lost messages. It also makes sense because what exactly makes up the difference that causes frequencies to behave differently? What's the difference between a ghost, data, or an echo if all of it is frequency? There has to be something within the frequency structure to result in all of these different phenomena. Why is it that living beings made of frequency are dissolved or corrupted, while inanimate objects that are also frequencies remain unaffected? To answer this, we might have to look at void space itself. Let's list what we know about void space so far. Amy says that if Rover falls into void space, even he will be consumed, erased from existence. Lahai Roy theorizes that Aleph 1 is the embodiment of voidance, the dissolution of all things. Voidance just means the state of being void or empty, and Amy says that she has confirmed this theory personally. She says that no living soul can withstand a place like void space. We also know void storms act as a portal into void space, and inside, time and space isn't linear. They have no meaning. There's even a lore entry belonging to Amy talking about Aleph 1, explaining that whatever it engulfed simply ceased to be. And just like the definition found in the game's glossary, any living entity entering this domain suffers a rapid loss of frequency, eventually leading to the total dissolution of their existence. And just for thoroughness' sake, existence...
Bruh, do y'all see what I mean? Before he even gets his thought process off of him explaining his, explaining the shit, right? I mentioned this at the start of this reaction, how Withering Waves flip-flops their fucking lore just for the sake of convenience for the plot. They did it. They introduced the concept of anchoring with then they flip-flopped it when Galbrena came. They introduced all this information related to Aleph 1 and how like if someone could even survive inside of Aleph 1 and like Void Matter, and they literally have it written that nothing could survive in it. They cease to be. But yet, simultaneously, as we saw with the 3.3 story, shit still continues to exist in there, both physical objects and apparently the remains of people's souls, or just people's souls in general, still exist in there. Do you see what I'm talking about? This flip-flopping of lore and the rules made for it just to fit the story, so we can have these spectacle moments. It's truly asinine.
Existence means the state or fact of being, having objective reality, or living. It refers to the presence of something. Alright, so with these aspects in mind, we can't really answer why it only affects living frequencies while completely ignoring inanimate objects. We just don't have enough information. But even if we can't answer this question, we can still use all that we've theorized so far and apply it to the actual cutscene in question. When Amyth is found by someone in void space, she calls them someone consumed by void matter. She offers to protect them, but the person offers up their frequency instead. Amyth refuses and states that the person's existence is already nearly spent. Yes, the quote in the game is cut off, but I don't think anyone will doubt that's what was implied here.
I'm not gonna lie. I thought this was Rover. I thought this was a female Rover in front of Amyth. I was gonna say that, but I kept my mouth shut during this moment.
So given what Amyth is saying and what we're shown visually, does my theory get disproven? Well, yesn't. Let's take it step by step. Can the frequency
Hold on, let me hear that again.
of this person exist in void space?
Hold up, let me hear that one more time.
Saying and what we're shown visually, does my theory get disproven? Well, yesn't.
Yes, it. Oh man, this shit is funny. Yes, it. I gotta use this from now on. Yes, it.
Let's take it step by step. Can the frequency of this person exist in void space? Yes, it can. It's been proven through both Rover's frequency and Amyth traversing void space, as well as all of the other remains of past civilizations. Can it be corrupted? Yes, it can. But as we know, time and space have no meaning here, so maybe we're dealing with a very lucky coincidence where the frequency wasn't yet corrupted. Can this frequency exist in its current form? Well, no, it can't. At least not according to everything that we've talked about so far. Amyth confirms that the person in front of her is someone consumed by void matter. This scene takes place in void space, and we know that void space can be found in high-density void matter. Given the glossary definition of void space, any living entity entering this domain suffers a rapid loss of frequency, eventually leading to the total dissolution of their existence. But Amyth is warning the person against giving up their frequency because she's worried about their dwindling existence. How is that possible? If any living being gets rapidly devoured, their frequency should exist, yes, but not in this form. Not in the form of someone still retaining their existence and sentience. If they didn't retain some form of existence, then Amith would have no reason to worry about them. Their frequency should exist, but considering what we've discussed so far, this frequency should have gone through the process of dissolution. It would result in the dismantling of their normal state of being into something without shape. Think of it like pulling a thread from a knitted sweater until its entire structure collapses. You'd still have the thread, but the sweater itself would cease to exist. As such, one way this could potentially work while not breaking the definitions the game itself has presented us with is if this person is a miracle. A person who coincidentally found Amith because time and space was so warped, she was able to almost instantly find her after being devoured. But that doesn't work with how this scene was visually presented to us, where thousands upon thousands of people were stuck for a long time in complete darkness until the Exostrider's light acted as a beacon to them. It goes against the idea of rapid dissolution. One person surviving alone is already a miracle, but having this many survive long enough to give Amith the coordinates? That is a really huge string of coincidences. And we also have to take into account the time it would have taken for people to actually map out their parts of void space. Another option would be if Amith would have somehow found all of these frequencies just like she did with rovers back in 3.1. But that would be almost impossible because while Amith is able to explore void space, it doesn't seem like she can track these frequencies, and she would have to gather thousands of them by herself. Now that we've reached this point, let me remind you of what my theory was at the very beginning of this video. That all of the victims of the Void Storm should not have existed in this scene due to the way that void space was presented to us. So was my theory wrong? Yes, partly. If we take the literal meaning of the word dissolution, then the victims should exist in this scene. I was wrong about frequencies not being able to just exist within void space. They can exist in a dissolved state. However, according to the game's own lore, these frequencies cannot exist in the form that they were presented in. The problem is that these frequencies have human form. They have awareness and they're able to synchronize their efforts together to help Amith get the map. Amith herself confirms their existence, which is something that they shouldn't have. So the story has to explain how people who should have undergone rapid frequency loss and dissolution were still able to appear as coherent, sentient figures and find Amith. As things stand, the game doesn't give us enough to bridge that gap. This isn't a question of whether the scene is emotionally beautiful. It is, anyone can see that. But it is a question about whether the lore underneath supports the emotion. So then, why did they go down this path? Well, because this is most likely a reference to Gurren Lagann, one of my favorite animes of all time. And I think they wanted to replicate that style of epic, awe-inspiring, and hopeful conclusion. But Gurren Lagann...
Yeah, even when he mentioned it in my chat, I was like, even Gurren Lagann is still, like, because I think we all agreed it blatantly, that Gurren Lagann still has better written... It's crazy, Gurren Lagann... Oh my goodness, I just realized. The whole frequency thing that he mentioned earlier, right, about how frequency was used to describe like damn near everything in the game up to this point, right? The same thing goes with Gurren Lagann though, right? Because everything in Gurren Lagann, like the will to fight, having the strong willpower, it just goes back into spiral energy. Like the whole spiral energy and shit like that, right? That spiral energy is built into the foundation of everything. Right? They make it a point to mention this once we get into like season 2 or the latter half of the show with the last 12, 13, 14 episodes, right? They make it a point to like make this known as the scale of the battle keeps getting bigger and bigger, that we're in a whole nother dimension of power, right? Oh, excuse me. Right, but the difference in execution is with Gurren Lagann kept it simple. Wuthering Waves kept adding shit to it more and more beyond just like, oh, this is someone's soul. Oh, this is someone's the essence of their existence. Or oh, that's the signal of a machine. Oh, that's the radio. This, that, and the third. Right? You see what I'm saying? But even still, Gurren Lagann still found a way to make it emotionally compelling as we saw this squad grow from the gutter underground to all the way to the cosmos, looking like they're fighting at God's front door, nigga. You see what I'm saying? It felt appropriate. But for Withering Waves feel like they tried to, it's seemingly now that he mentions this in this video, is that it feels like Withering Waves just wanted to copy what they saw was really cool and popular without understanding the meat and potatoes behind the dish. This dish does not taste good if you don't put the seasoning in it, if you don't chop the potatoes right, if you don't cook that meat right. I don't watch too many Gordon Ramsay clips of him flaming niggas for not getting their food right. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and do this right now. Let's do this right fucking now. We're doing this. Yep. I'll make sure to add this person. Let's do this. Hold up. Hell's Kitchen. I gotta find it. I gotta find at least some clip. Hold on, let's find something. The first, give me something, anything.
Can I walk this plate? No.
Hurry up, Sam, they're dying. Come on.
Watch your back, come on, coming down.
Hey, all of you, come here. All of you! I'm listening, chef.
Yes, chef.
Oh my God.
Some disgusting pig brought me the sample scrambled eggs. The sample scrambled eggs that I cooked an hour ago.
Make sure you guys study the sample plates.
These guests, they save lives on a daily basis. And you want to serve that? Jeremy! Dan! You'll fucking kill someone with that!
Prime example. I just want to play a little bit of that because apparently, you know, these clips get copyrighted like a motherfucker. Anyway, back to the video.
Most likely a reference to Gurren Lagann, one of my favorite animes of all time. And I think they wanted to replicate that style of epic, awe-inspiring, and hopeful conclusion. But Gurren Lagann and Wuthering Waves' approach to world building is very different. Gurren Lagann focuses its story on Kamina and Simon, and how they lead a revolution with the help of a mech they found called Lagann. Gurren Lagann's emotional storytelling works because it was baked into the story from the very beginning, and was visually reinforced throughout the anime's 27 episodes. We don't really know about Lagann's origins or how it functions for the majority of the anime, and it doesn't matter, because...
Yeah, and another thing too, before he even continues, the difference between the Extra Strider and the Gurren Lagann, aka the mech, getting away with doing crazy shit is because the fucking mech in Gurren Lagann, we see it evolve every time they fight someone. They can combine a small head with a bigger body robot. Boom, Gurren Lagann. Oh, we can take this piece of someone else's mech, attach it to ours. Oh, we're getting a helmet now. Oh, we got shades now. Oh, we got all this other shit now because we stole it from other people's mechs, and now it's our shit now. Now we're doing even more crazy shit, right? Gurren Lagann can get away with doing that. The Extra Strider can't, because we never saw the Extra Strider do something like, oh, throw a spear at something and then teleport it to the other side of the cosmos. That was never a thing mentioned as one of its abilities, nor was it ever shown up until the last moment in the fight against Aleph 1. After we defeat its little avatar clone, or its little avatar that it, you know, manifested to fight us, and then we just teleport to the other side of the fucking cosmos, right? It was literally an out of the blue ability just to, you know, justify the bullshit of the fight. Because realistically, we should not have won against Aleph 1. Realistically, giving the Extra Strider the ability just to teleport Aleph 1 to the other side of the cosmos is literally the only justification to make it seem like we had the ability to beat Aleph 1, when we really didn't. Even that ability alone wasn't enough to defeat it. We just sent it away, right? Because realistically, we should have lost. Aleph 1 should have stomped our shit out. Ate us alive. I'm eating you, nigga. Type shit. Anyway, let's continue.
Origins or how it functions for the majority of the anime, and it doesn't matter. Because what's important is how it synchronizes with its pilot, Simon, and how it only works based on his willpower, emotions, and drive. It was shown that Lagann works properly while Simon has Kamina beside him. It completely fails to respond after his death and comes back to life the moment Simon finds his resolve to face adversity no matter what. Only later in the story do we get a name that explains this mysterious power of emotion that is able to affect Logon, spiral energy. But even before this term was introduced, the audience already understands the rule on an emotional level, and it never once strayed from how it worked since it was first established in the anime. The raw emotion and pure madness of human will powers up Logon to evolve together with its pilot so that they can triumph over insurmountable odds. This is the language of Gurren Lagann from the very beginning. Wuwa, on the other hand, has not done its world building in this way. The game does use emotion, obviously, but they are secondary or even tertiary to the main sci-fi framework. That's why we have all of this terminology, frequencies, the Rebel curve, sonorospheres, overclocking, tacit discords, wave-worn phenomena. These are the rules of how Solaris 3 works. So when the story suddenly shifts into a conclusion where emotions seem to overpower everything else, the problem isn't that emotion is involved. The problem is that the story has not built a bridge between its established systems and emotion as an overpowering force.
This is what happens when they do poor world building and they have to half-ass their world building to make something seem good and cool just so they can flex about how spectacle it was. This is what happens. Better yet, I'd argue this is what happens when you decide to create something that's supposed to be the rival to another game that you want to beat and pit in the dirt, but you don't actually put forth the time and energy into the fundamentals of the story, which is why it's only taking Wuthering Waves now into its, how many years Wuthering Waves? Its second year of the game's existence, right? To at least try to make some type of semblance of a better story. Like, that's what they were doing at the beginning of version 2. Then people felt iffy about the latter end of version 2 for a lot of reasons, and valid reasons. Then Lahairoi, we're still seeing the same reasons that is iffy with some new shit added on top of it, and we're still seeing the same writing mistakes, the same shit. We're still seeing the same problems added with some new problems. You see what I'm saying? Wuthering Waves still to this day have not gotten their footing. They've gotten their footing in they got their toes in the dirt. That's a better way to describe it. They got their toes in the dirt, but they ain't put both feet in the dirt. You see what I'm saying? They're gripping onto the dirt right now with one toe. But they need to put both feet in the dirt wholeheartedly. Right? I remember there was some talk a while ago that people were on Twitter they're gonna hire somebody to help with the lore aspect of the game to make the lore better or whatever. Only find out that wasn't true. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong about that. But yeah.
Of course. Gurren Lagann can say, believe in yourself, or your drill will pierce the heavens, because that is what the show has been saying from day 1, episode 1. Wuthering Waves has spent most of its time saying, here are the rules and systems of my world, and here's the terminology that explains how this works. So if 3.3 wants to end with something that drives home the idea that emotion or human will trumps all, then the game needs to show the audience how that fits inside the world it has already built. Now, obviously that doesn't mean that Wuthering Waves couldn't have had a change of theme somewhere in the story. But if we're going to do that, and if it's going to heavily affect pre-established rules, then it needs explanation. It needs build-up. It needs something to make it coherent with what the game presented us with at the start.
This is why I still hold on to the opinion that version 1 of Wuthering Waves should have been longer. They should not have immediately jumped to version 2.0 after version 1.4. We should have still had version 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, 1.8. The reason I say all that is because Wuthering Waves is doing this thing where their story lasts for an entire year for the new region, right? I don't remember them announcing that that's how they're going to do their story moving forward. I know Genshin announced that. Star Rail had announced it for Amphorius. You see what I'm saying? Especially after what happened with Penacony, right? So, Wuthering Waves, they're doing the same thing of making their story last longer, but only after, version 1 into version 2. Again, if they let version 1 cook a little more, they could have introduced concepts like anchoring, or concepts like what he's explaining here about how emotion can override or even flow with the pre-established system of power in the world that exists, like frequencies and shit like that. Right? If they gave version 1 more time to cook and they cooked their lore a little more, then using it in the main story plot for some of these moments won't feel like an ass pull. It'll feel like, okay, yeah, this makes sense because they pre-established this, right? This, that, and the third. Like in the world of Genshin Impact, right? They established like how there's a difference between using Irminsul to like rewrite information versus being like, oh, time travel, right? Prime example of this. You had Wanderer, formerly known as Scaramouche. He thought he went back in time to change what had happened to prevent the death of his friend, the only person that he called family in his life. He thought he can just go back in time and change that and then think they were going to still live if he changed what had happened. But the thing is that's not how Irminsul works. Irminsul, in the world of Genshin Impact, does not work that way. It does not alter time. It only alters information. The events still play out the same, right? But we know the power that is time still exists in the world of Genshin Impact because, as we saw with Columbina using the power of time, when she was inside the mirror of the moon's reflection, right? She kept going backwards in time, further and further back to the point that she met with her sisters from olden time, who were the original moon goddesses. She kept going further and further back in time until she finally meet them. And she kind of reached the end of the line of how farther back she could go. But as she was going backwards through time, we went back in time through every moment damn near every moment that happened in the main story. Like, oh, what defended the Frost Moon Science from being hit by scatter blast of the Kuvaki cannon, right? We found out, oh, that was Columbina's doing. Oh, who is Lunapar? What's this little Lunapar thing doing here, right? Find out, oh, that's a creation of Columbina's, right? This, that, and the third. Because Genshin Impact does this thing where it makes sure to make a difference between, like, for the time travel thing, they made a blatant difference between traveling in time and altering information in Irminsul. They made a blatant difference between the two. That's why no one questions the logic behind it when it's presented in the story, because we know how the fuck it works on a baseline from what the story presented, and it kept it consistent.
It needs build-up. It needs something to make it coherent with what the game presented us with at the start, so that the narrative's evolution can be consistent. And it doesn't even have to be a long or complicated explanation. Maybe we could have taken the time to have a cutscene where the Exostrider releases a wave of energy within void space that temporarily allows these frequencies to regain part of their original form, just long enough for them to find Amy and help her out. The story has...
I still hated the Strider Gate. I hated the location of the Strider Gate because I couldn't pinpoint where the fuck we were at in terms of like the cosmic structure. Like, are we outside the planet that is Solaris 3, or are we in some other dimension that's a layer above Solaris 3 right before you could reach the outside? Like, I still was confused by that. Like, where the fuck were we at? Are we in outer space or not?
Has to give us something, because Wua has built its world through systems and rules, and even if this scene represents an emotional miracle, we still need a clear explanation on how the miracle fits into those systems or how it supersedes them. It's their story after all, so they can make up any rules and exceptions to make it work.
Yeah, but their rules are so fucking loosey-goosey at this point, right? Again, go back to the Genshin comparison, right? With Irminsul, right? We know that fate is written into Irminsul, carved into the tree sometimes, like how Fontaine was destined to flood, and the people of Fontaine were meant to dissolve into the waters, leaving the Hydro Archon being the only one sitting on her throne, you know, crying and weeping, right? That was the fate that was predicted to happen. And then guess what? It did happen. It just didn't happen in the way that, you know, fate made it out to be, because of everyone pitching in, you know, to defy fate in some way, shape, or form. AKA the variables like Nouvelette, the prophecy about Fontaine flooding. It was written into Irminsul. AKA it was going to come true sooner or later, because that was the punishment given to them by Celestia, right? Guess what? It did not mention the Hydro Dragon Sovereign getting back their authority so that they could give the mimic humans of Fontaine true blood, true human blood, so that they themselves would not dissolve into the primordial water. So Fontaine would still flood, Farina would still weep on her throne, but the people of Fontaine would not have died, or they wouldn't have experienced the death of the self and dissolved into the primordial waters. It just become a collective consciousness, right? That was the one variable that changed everything, that allowed for Fontaine's prophecy to still happen, but just not in the way you think it would happen based off just reading what the prophecy was on the baseline, right? That's how they, keep the consistency of what Irminsul is and what fate is, while simultaneously showing us there is ways to bypass fate with certain variables, using certain pieces on the chessboard to get the edge. Make it seem like something that was meant to be a punishment, make it to be a survivor story. Being like, this punishment that was supposed to happen, oh, it happened. It just didn't happen the way you thought it was going to happen, right? And that's what kind of one of the things I love about Genshin Impact's story, is how they still keep it consistent with what the lore presented, while finding a backdoor solution or a loophole in the lore to be like, okay, we can use this to exploit it, or we can get around this by doing that, right? They wrote the rules and systems, and now we are exploiting the poking holes in the rules and systems to find a better outcome for ourselves.
But leaving it completely unexplained damages the experience because it makes it seem like it's not the natural conclusion the story was heading towards. Instead, I'm left with the impression that the rules here were bent because this scene needed to happen. Alright, I think it's time we move on to the next scene. I want to talk about the moment when Amith gives Rover the cassette with the coordinates. This section is going to rely mostly on visual observation because that's all the game gives us to work with. When Rover arrives with Amy's shell, he is pulled out of the transparent sphere that most likely represents his control over the Exostrider by Denya's hand. Amy takes control of the shell, flies out of the same sphere, gives Rover the cassette, and pushes him away. I was so confused in this scene because, as we know, Amith is capable of traversing void space with ease, so if she was close enough to touch Rover, why push him away instead of just pulling him back into the Exostrider sphere? If you follow the cutscene closely, you'll notice that Rover no longer has the hand gripping his body. Neither are the little origami figures. Are they still on screen, floating around them? Sure. But there's no physical contact, no visual indicator that they're still restraining Rover and pulling him away. So if Amith can reach Rover, and if there is no obvious force still holding him, then the question becomes very simple. Why push him away instead of pulling him back into the Exostrider? And some might say it's because she needed Rover to get the cassette back to the Institute so it can be decoded. But let's not forget that what is actually on the cassette is just a set of coordinates that shows how to find the Exostrider in void space. So, realistically speaking, had Amy just pulled Rover back into the Exostrider instead of pushing him away, there would be no need for the cassette. He wouldn't need to find the Exostrider again because he's already back in.
I don't know if Vincent is going to answer this or give this other answer to this. I think the real reason why she just pushes him away from it, I think it just boils down to they're trying to keep her character consistent with the whole, she wanted to sacrifice herself to save the world shit. So that, and she's also doing this because she loves Rover, because that's their parent figure, and they're upholding what they learned from their parent figure. And they're being like, yo, I'm trying to protect you. Get out of here, bro. I'm okay. Everything's fine. See you later, Dad or Mom. Right? I think that's just what the scene boils down to for why she pushed him away instead of keeping him close.
Some might even want to say that the cassette also contained the operational data from the Exostrider needed to complete the drive replica, but this would be incorrect, because once Rover is back at the Institute, the gang confirms that they had already received the needed operational data even before they began decoding the cassette. And others might want to mention that Rover in fact had his connection to the Exostrider disrupted and could not connect back to it. To which I would reply that the second time he piloted the Exostrider, walking back into the sphere seemed to work just fine. Remember, Rover used the keystone to pilot the Exostrider for the first time. That doesn't mean that his body remained in the physical world while his mind was piloting the Exostrider. If that was the case, then the moment the connection was interrupted, Rover should have woken up right next to the keystone. But that didn't happen. He woke up...
Sorry, my shit lagging a little bit. Hold up.
in the middle of the academy with his physical body. That means that whatever the...
Yeah, that shit was weird as fuck. And my impression of the keystone was like a literal object that we could hold that goes into the Extra Strider. I thought we were going to go collect the keystone, grab this item that is the keystone, go back to the Extra Strider, go into the cockpit control function, insert it, and then, you know, take a seat inside the cockpit and then start, you know, commanding it and shit like that. That's what I thought. But they kind of went down this more, in my opinion, I feel like lazy route of being like, okay, the rover is now inside the Extra Strider and piloting it. But they're doing this thing where like, oh, they're surrounded by a spear that's meant to be the command hub. And then they're just like moving the body around. Me personally, I would have loved to see the inside of the Extra Strider, literally. Because if the Extra Strider was this, it's essentially the Extra Strider is a Gundam spaceship, basically, right? And we know that this damn thing was used to transport the Sentinels from wherever Rover was from, or wherever Rover was from, to Solaris. That means it has to have a cockpit that you can go into, and even like a storage area to house the Sentinels in it. The fact that we did not get to explore the insides of the Extra Strider in its fullness is kind of crazy if you think about it. Like, why didn't we get to see the cockpit or like the power core location or like whatever storage room that exists, the hall, like giant like material or whatever the have you, or cargo, whatever. Why couldn't we see all that if the Extra Strider was meant to be like this Gundam spaceship? Like, I would love to see like some vault area where there's potentially a Sentinel still locked away in it, in the cargo hold of the fucking Extra Strider. That would have been pretty cool, but they opted for this real lazy route of just being like, okay, we're going to show the rover inside of a spear that represents them controlling the fucking Sentinel. To me, that was weak as shit.
The moment the connection was interrupted, Rover should have woken up right next to the keystone. But that didn't happen. He woke up in the middle of the academy with his physical body. That means that whatever the keystone did, it transferred his physical body into the Exostrider. When he had to find the Exostrider again, he physically traversed void space. He didn't use the keystone, he literally walked through the rift into void space, found the Exostrider, and assumed control once he was back inside of the transparent sphere. Fact of the matter is, we can only infer what happened based on what the main quest shows.
I'm gonna say this as well. If Vincent is even watching my reaction to his video, bro, I'm not gonna lie. From the way you look versus the way your voice sounds, you sound way younger. You sound like you're like 17 or 18. You got a real young voice.
Shows us, because it doesn't explain how this connection works through exposition. The only way we as an audience can understand how it works is through the cutscenes, which clearly present this transparent sphere as the main way to control the Exostrider. And the visual language the game has used up until now has been pretty consistent. And as a result, Amyth pushing Rover away makes the scene feel like it is prioritizing the tragedy of separation over the clearest practical solution the visuals appear to present. The scene does not really communicate why the obvious visual solution was impossible. I also want to remark upon the fact that there was nothing stopping Amyth from going back to Solaris after she gave Rover the cassette. The whole point of Amyth being trapped in void space was because of the closed Strider Gate, but when Rover was piloting the Exostrider, that's exactly what he did. He opened the Strider Gate, and it remained open. As far as I've been able to verify, there was no mention of the Strider Gate closing after we were brought back to Solaris. And the quest itself seems to confirm this when Chase says that we can't use the keystone again because it is heavily contaminated. If you'll recall, he mentioned before the first trip into void space that the void matter barriers can only hold out for 10 minutes. And let's not forget that the Exostrider is about the only thing that can open or close the Strider Gate, which leads me to believe that it was never closed, resulting in the contaminated keystone. Contaminated by what exactly?
I mean, the Extra Strider did say they were preparing to send us back to Lahiroi, right? But I don't remember them saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna close the gateway behind you." Actually, it's best to look at this now. Let's see. It was around here, somewhere around here. Let me play this part. I'm not gonna lie. Every time I hear, I'm sorry, but that's just stars. Every third, I didn't see any words. Ah, shit. Let me refresh this. Give me a second.
Malediction. Farewell, Arbiter. Please deliver my temporary goodbye to the people who forged this heart. Prediction. We will meet again in the boundless sea of stars.
Maybe they said it before this moment. Actually, let me go back a little bit. Just to see if they said it before this one. Not the best way of doing it.
Designation change. Valediction.
Okay, it was after.
Again in the bound.
I've been hearing back and I've seen this. Okay, never.
This quest just feels.
Never mind. It was way before that bastard said that shit.
So, let's make our goodbye.
Proposal. Please allow me to take her to Lahai Roy.
How does the extra strider know about the cassettes?
Briefing. While traversing the stars at high velocity. Laris script. It's
Really, you can give.
recorded the signal it has been. The Far Watcher.
The Far Watcher. The most. For the void. Oh,
This recording is a gift to the people of Lahai Roy. Status. Strider Gate closure imminent. Preparing to return the Arbiter.
okay, never mind. Okay, so it says the Strider Gate closure imminent, meaning the Strider Gate was about to close. So the Strider Gate did get closed. If I'm to take this line that the extra Strider says as fact. So the Strider Gate did close behind us.
Exo Strider is about the only thing that can open or close the Strider Gate, which leads me to believe that it was never closed, resulting in the contaminated keystone. Contaminated by what exactly? Well, void matter, of course.
Oh, wait a minute. He's referring to the contamination of the keystone that happened before the boss fight. That's what he's referring to. He's not referring to after the boss fight. Never mind. I'm wrong on that. My fault.
And what is it that Amith can traverse with relative ease? Void space. And what is void space full of? High density void matter. So what I'm gathering from this logic is that Amith had a pathway open for her return that she never used. I'm sure someone is going to argue that she couldn't have known, but she actually could. She knows that the only way for the Exo Strider to get into void space is through the Strider Gate. So the only confirmation she needed was Rover's presence there with the Exo Strider. And yet, after giving him the cassette, she just waited instead of trying to come back home. But there is the other possibility that maybe, in this exact moment, she didn't have the power to do so. Even though I have a feeling her being able to traverse void space has nothing to do with her current power levels, let's just say for the sake of it that she is weakened at this moment. And she can't teleport, but we know that because of the time dilation, she has been waiting for Rover's return for a very long time. But after they're finally reunited again, the first thing Amy does is immediately teleport to Solaris to grab the drive replica. And I find it very hard to believe that her powers only recovered in this exact moment. And don't worry, I haven't forgotten about the scene with Amy at the end of the quest, where she mentions that the reason she didn't return with Rover was because of the gravity pulling her back. First, I'd like to just point out.
Okay, so wait a minute. Okay, so that means I missed an interaction. That's what this tells me. I missed an interaction that had happened. That's what this tells me. So hopefully, next time I stream Within Ways, I'll do this interaction. I have Within Ways open right now. Actually, let me see if I can find that location for this interaction. Actually, let me see. Oh, shit. I I'm gonna keep playing the video. I'm just see if I can find this interaction and location.
And I find it very hard to believe that her powers only recovered in this exact moment. And don't worry, I haven't forgotten about the scene with Amy at the end of the quest, where she mentions that the reason she didn't return with Rover was because of the gravity pulling her back. First, I'd like to just point out that this is the first time there was any mention of gravity or how it is now some major limiting factor in void space. Up until this point, Amy has been able to traverse void space at will, so I'm a little bit skeptical when it comes to the introduction of this new gravitational pull as the reason she couldn't escape. But for the sake of the argument, let's say it's true. Let's say this gravity is what stopped Amy from escaping void space and coming back to Solaris. Even then, I still have questions. Recall how the cutscene of her giving the cassette to Rover was presented. She got out of the sphere, got close enough to touch Rover, gave him the
Yeah, she was even swimming towards him, by the way. So let that be known. She was swimming through quote unquote gravity that's pulling her, that's preventing her from leaving. It would have been better if Aleph 1 was chaining her down to prevent her from leaving. That would be more believable than like, oh, gravity is stopping me when you're floating towards me and swimming like a fish. Stop it.
The cassette and then pushed him away. Now, if this gravity is so strong as to affect Amy, a person with the ability to traverse void space at will and keep her stuck there, how come it had no effect on Rover? They were literally right next to each other, so how was Rover not pulled in by the same gravitational force that kept Amy a prisoner? How come a single push from her had enough force to get him out of the gravitational pull? The story presents us with a very specific mechanic here that isn't really consistent. And if it is somehow consistent, then what about the moment when Rover reunites with Amy the second time? How was she suddenly able to retrieve the drive replica? Did this newly introduced gravity disappear or suddenly stop working? Could there be a logical answer that explains this scene? Yes, of course there could. Does the scene actually give us the answer? No, it doesn't. It leaves it completely unexplained, and it doesn't even offer players hints to unravel the answers for themselves. I mean, if void space travel was possible, I think it would have done well for the morale of everyone involved if Amy would have returned to Solaris after their first reunion. But instead, she just waited to be saved, even though she didn't really need it. And if returning...
Yep, and then they gave us a whole message about how, oh, this story wasn't about us saving the world. It was about the world coming to save us. Shut up!
It truly was impossible because of the gravitational pull, then we have the problem of Rover somehow not being affected by it and having it disappear exactly when the main characters need it most, even though gravity is a universal law. As for the final scene, where the Exostrider hurls a spear at Aleph 1 and sends it back to the far reaches of the universe, it's clearly based on the same inspiration that was drawn from Gurren Lagann. Does it look cool? Yes, it's an insanely awesome scene. But I've already explained how the story didn't bridge its systems with this emotional outcome, and how this results in giving players the feeling that the story bends its own rules because it wants the emotional impact. Hold up, stop the presses, hi! This is post-recording Vincent coming to you live for an emergency broadcast. What I just said about the final Exostrider scene, scrap that. Delete it from existence, because while I was going through my final checks before greenlighting the whole video, I just found something really cool. I want you to take a look at the cutscene where we banish Aleph 1. Let me know if you notice anything.
Okay, Dark Swirls. The sword is being thrown. It's being powered into a spear. And they toss it. It hits what seems to be the core of Aleph 1. Some back door opens behind it, and then it just swirls and disappears.
Did you notice that? No? What if I bring this up?
Oh, that. I mean, I ain't gonna lie. Only when seeing the scene, I was thinking about her, but like, I want to get my conclusion personally first before I, mention this character.
This is why these videos take so long to make, because I have to go back and check the footage again to make sure my initial theories are sound. And this is why visual storytelling is so important in entertainment media, not just in gaming. Because what I initially thought to be something impossible for the Exostrider to do, now suddenly has a proper and consistent lore explanation. The scene where the Exostrider exiles Aleph 1 has just confirmed that the entity we know as the Goddess and the Exostrider itself share the same origin, because they use the same method of travel. When the Goddess transported Rover to Salaris, she opened up a gate that looks like our well-known tacit marks. She then pushes Rover away and we get the same swirling animation that we get when the Exostrider exiles Aleph 1. But where's the tacit mark shaped gate, I hear you ask? It's right behind Aleph 1. That gate is so big that it barely fits the entire screen. I didn't even notice it the first time during my stream. It was
Same.
actually the spiral animation that made me think, wait a minute, I've seen this before. And because both the Goddess and the Exostrider seem to be using the same method of transportation, we now know that whatever Rover's homeland is, the Goddess is definitely a part of it. This was already hinted at in 3.1, but this pretty much confirms it in my eyes. Sure, you can question where the power to open a gate big enough to fit a black hole comes from. Maybe it's coming from the drive replica. Maybe it's because Rover, the Arbiter, is piloting it. Maybe it's because there are two synchronists inside of it at the same time.
Granted, I chalk it up to whatever power and immaculate science that Rover's home planet developed grants one the power to do that. That's what I chalk it up to, because that's the only thing that fucking makes sense. Outside of that, it was just an ass pull to throw Aleph 1 away so that they can be brought back later to get their ass kicked. Anyway.
Or maybe it's all of the above. We can't know for sure unless we get direct confirmation from the game itself. But the important part is that the visual storytelling gives us a bridge. It used the same visual language to remind us of a process that was presented to us at the very beginning of the game. Point is, we already know that the Exostrider's purpose is to transport Sentinels, and we've seen how big the Sentinels can get. Can the Exostrider carry...
Man, I'm experiencing a lot of lag right now. I got too many tabs open. Probably what it is.
One or two in his hands? Maybe, but what if he's supposed to carry more than that? That's why it makes sense for the Exostrider to be able to open giant gates and transport multiple Sentinels at once. Now, I don't think opening a gate massive enough to swallow Aleph 1 is part of the standard specs for an Exostrider, so that's why I assumed that this kind of power came from either Rover, Amy, the drive replica, or some combination of the three. I also want to tell you that Kuro just hinted at something that up until now, the story told us is impossible. They hinted at the possibility of a Threnodian's death. After the Exostrider exiled Aleph 1, there is a bit of dialogue where Amith is told by the Exostrider that under current parameters...
See? I even mentioned this when I was playing it. I mentioned this point too. That means if they really wanted to bullshit their victory against Aleph 1, this black hole entity... Literally, they could have done it. We literally could have done it. We could have killed this Thenodian, which would have been a really big move, by the way. But also, to me, at least, it would have come off as an ass pull. Even with all these revelations that's happening right now in the midst of this fucking video, right? It would still, for me, feel like an ass pull. Because this is the first time we're seeing this type shit. And there was no real build up to, like, oh, what can the Exostrider do? This, that, and the third. Right?
The permanent termination of Aleph 1 is impossible. But that's the thing. He's saying current parameters, when up until now the game told us it's outright impossible. This implies that the Exostrider knows that there are certain parameters that when met can permanently terminate even a Threnodian like Aleph 1. Or at the very least, he knows that these parameters exist without knowing what exactly they are. Whether it's the Exostrider or Rover's homeland that has this knowledge remains to be seen. Still, I would have loved it if either party would have broached this subject in more detail, especially since it's a pretty important piece of knowledge. Anyway, this was the important message. I didn't want to rewrite the script again just to add this section in, but this is exactly what I mean when it's important to have your written lore and visual storytelling match up to support the emotional payoff of the story.
Exactly. I agree, 100%.
The conclusion I will come to at the end of this video remains the same. I haven't changed it. But after adding this section in, I honestly feel that much more optimistic with patch 3.3. And now let's return to the original script and to my somewhat deflated past self. But there are other things in 3.3 that I want to talk about before wrapping up, starting with Denya. I think she has been underutilized in this story, especially when she seems to be tied so directly with Al.
Exactly. I had the same POV, twin. I felt the same way, and I expressed it in great detail through my playthrough. Again, it makes no sense for a character who's this important to not have been like drip fed some breadcrumb type shit across version 3's story up to this point, knowing that they were giving her such an important role, knowing her connection to the Fraxidus and whatever the fuck she was doing, and all this other shit, right? And knowing what the architect wants out of all this, which is people to resonate with the Thornodians so that people could survive the lament without having to worry about, oh man, I'm gonna die from tacit discords and shit like that, right? That's how they seek to like help humanity survive in this world where we got Thornodians and frequencies and tacit discords and all the other crazy and laments and shit, right? That's their POV. That's their answer to the solution or to the problem. That's their solution to the problem. You get the point I'm making. Anyway.
Aleph 1 as a Threnodian resume. Now, I understand that her second part is most likely coming later, but that is also part of the problem. If this is meant to be the emotional climax of the Lahairoi arc, then having Denya play such a short role in the climax makes the current chapter feel incomplete. Her boss fight was great, I'm not taking that away from the game, but I think her personal story should have been woven more directly into this finale so that her role, Aleph 1, Amith, and the Lahairoi conflict could all tie together more cleanly. As for Chisa, man.
Get Chisa off my screen. Bruh, the amount of times Chisa was all over the screen, yet only had one voice line that, by the way, was only possible if you stood next to her while everyone else was standing around in their own little personal little huddles. She would say one voice line and then that's it. She didn't say nothing else. She remained quiet. She just sat here, just there, existing. Not even contributing much, for real, if we want to be fucking for real right now. It's like, bruh, what was the point of your character? They could literally swap out Chisa with a different character from Lahairoi to be our introduction character into the new region, and that character will still be better. Literally. Genuinely. Shoot, swap out Chisa with Hiyuki, and essentially the same story happens. The difference is Chisa's perspective on what happened to the town she's from and the shit she went through is completely different from what Hiyuki went through. But Hiyuki's is more so like the direct result of her failing to do her job, right? Whereas Chisa was just like a unfortunate fucking victim and shit like that. Or we can just scrap Chisa's story, her personal story altogether, and just put Hiyuki's in there and keep it pushing. Chisa, by far, the most disrespected character in the entirety of Wuthering Waves. And I'm not even an Ultra Wuthering Waves fan, but what I won't tolerate is characters being blatantly disrespected and just thrown to the wayside like trash, especially if they were supposed to hold such big importance to the story and have a big, important fucking conclusion to their story. Bruh, if they started off Withering Wave version 3.0 with a segue story for Chisa before we went into the main plot of version 3, I would be happy with that. But that's not what they did. They disrespected the shit out of her, making her an optional individual to interact with. Do you not see how terrible that is? And then she just appears on screens being for the devs to be like, see, she's still here. She's still here. Man, nobody give a fuck about Chisa no more. Bro, I can't fathom this idea of killing the love that people would have for a character for God knows what reason. Because I swear, the Chisa death is something that needs to be studied. Because that's what she got. She got a death, a disrespectful level death.
Poor Chisa. It seems like I was right about this one as well, sadly.
And do y'all remember? I was watching niggas like the Nigerian perspective gas up Chisa like she's going to play some big important role in version 3.3 or version 3.2. Talking about some, everything we learned from like Hanami City and like Hiyuki and shit like that, and little drifties we got for Hiyuki is going to lead to some big, major, crazy role for Chisa in the story. This, that, and the third, only for that shit not to be true and way fucking off base. And I can't even blame them for having that thought process. I blame the writers of this fucking story not keeping their shit consistent and not using characters that should be used. Anyway.
She is physically present in 3.3, but barely feels present as a character. And honestly, I don't really know which is worse, having characters disappear from the story entirely, or having them show up only to stand there without saying anything.
They're both horrible. You don't even need to choose between one. This ain't a black and white decision. This is a black on black decision. It's bad across the board. It's terrible. It's horrendous. Diabolical. It's on a level of biblical evil, if we really want to play it like that. That's how bad it is. Truly and genuinely.
Meaningful. Whether she was included because of fan interest or because Kuro has future plans for her, this was not the kind of relevance
Let's be honest, it was because fans were complaining about the lack of Chisa being present, which I'm included in that regard. I'm not a fan, but I'm included in that regard of like how to treat your characters that's supposed to be so important to your fucking story. That's the only reason she was introduced or kept, present here. That's the only reason. They had no real plans for this character other than her to be like, oh, I'm from Lahiroi too. And then I don't do nothing the entire time. And only get to reappear in the story because the devs heard people complaining about it and they decided to drag me back into it just to have this one little cool scene or these two little cool scenes where I'm still relatively not doing shit. But, I'm just here. I'm present.
I think people were hoping for. The Shaper is in a slightly better position because at least he has dialogue and does contribute to figuring out the threats we're facing, but even then he's still a huge missed opportunity for what he could have been, especially with that character design. Lastly, I want to talk about...
And his death that should have happened, but they ass-pulled his death.
Something that's a little more subjective. When Rover talks to Hiyuki and tells her about how he's not the only one fighting, I find his words hollow. The exact quote is, "I've been part of that fight. But to pretend I'm the only reason they're standing, that everything fails if I do, that's arrogance. It's an insult to everyone else choosing to stand their ground." I like this line. I like what it is trying to say. I like the idea that Rover is pushing back against the savior complex and acknowledging the courage of everyone else who chooses to keep fighting.
Right, and I even called, even when this moment happened, I called it out in the midst of it, being like, this sounds like the writers of the story calling out people who said that, oh, their main character is just a fucking self-insert who does everything, who saves everything, and that no one else can do anything unless the main character is present throughout the story, saving their asses 24/7. That's what this shit felt like to me. And it's like, okay, cool, very cool moment. But like, unfortunately, you presented your character like that from Jump Street, and of course people are going to have this thought process of your main character, the self-insert power fantasy who gets everything done with nothing stopping them truly and genuinely. It's only now within recent time that things start, getting in the Rover's way of them completing an objective. But even then, that doesn't last long.
The problem is that in practice, I don't think Wuthering Waves has consistently dramatized that idea well enough. Because yes, there are moments where other characters meaningfully stand beside Rover. The battle against Overthrax in 1.0 had that feeling, 2.7 had the big Avengers Assemble moment, and 3.x has definitely improved in how often it brings older characters back into the story. I want to give the game credit for that, but across much of the story, the structure still tends to place Rover at the center of every major resolution. Just think about it. 1.3, we save Shorekeeper from becoming the Tethys Core. 1.4, we save Camellia from overclocking. 2.2, we save KallaTheYapper from her fate. 2.4, we save Lupa from becoming another Mia. 2.6, we save Yuno from being lost to chaos. 2.8, we save Chisa from Honami. 3.0, we save the Academy from the Void Worm, restore the Heliogyre, and make sure that Helios can replace the reactor drive. 3.2, we're basically Sigurka's therapist, and finally, 3.3, where we defeat Aleph 1. The contributions of other characters often feel secondary compared to Rover's decisive role, and because Wuthering Waves so often...
And that's true, right? Even though someone could argue, well, the characters were there and still present for those moments. Yeah, sure, but let's be fucking for real. They exist as secondary to the main character whose whole thing is the self-insert main character of this waifus collector simulator game. Casino game that we play. Let's be fucking for real. Right? And this, like, to make the comparison, right? Look at Genshin Impact. Genshin Impact's main character, they are strong, they are powerful. I made a video talking about what the Traveler can and cannot do. Right? I was even a little nuanced about it, right? Even in Genshin Impact's story, the Traveler is not this focal point of like, oh, they put the nail in the coffin absolutely for every damn conflict we got into. Right? And people deem that as a weakness for the Traveler always needing help or whatever the fuck to beat the boss or deal with the conflict that's happening in the midst of the story. But Genshin Impact has done a better job painting this picture of like the Traveler being a hero and a savior because of their existence here in this world that has a fate system that was created not by the cosmos itself, but by another living being's hands, this artificial fate system. And because of their existence in it, it's bypassing the rules and subverting fate that was created to be a certain type of way. So like when the Traveler, if the Traveler says a line like this, it comes off as absolutely true because we see too many times throughout Genshin's story where the Traveler's help that they get is not some, oh, there was a secondary addition just so that we can say this line. No, it was there since the start of the entire story of the Traveler doing his thing. Like when the Traveler helps the characters of Mondstadt defeat the Valen, does it come off as the Traveler plus his friends defeated the Valen, or does it feel like, oh, the squad defeated the Valen? It's the second answer, obviously, and it always felt that way all the fucking time. All the way up to where we are now, with the exception of certain fights, like, for example, Child versus Traveler or Senora versus Traveler. Those were individual 1v1 fights, right? So, obviously, those were moments where it's like, okay, this is clearly meant, the way the story is presenting it, this is clearly meant to be a single, player controller moment, not a, yo, this is a team battle fight moment. So they don't need to give us the message of, yo, I don't fight alone here. No, these moments were meant to be, I fight alone here to stand my ground, to show my resolve, right? But every other boss fight isn't that.
Often focuses its quests around one-on-one emotional bonds with Rover, I don't always feel like the cast has developed strong enough relationships with each other to fully sell that broader theme of camaraderie. That's why the line feels hollow to me. Not because it's the wrong thing to say, but because oftentimes the story itself has proven that, yes, most scenarios would have ended in failure without Rover's intervention. And even so, I can't shake this feeling that everyone is more or less subservient to the Rover. They don't act like Rover's equals. They act like they always admire him and will readily admit that Rover is more powerful than them or a cut above the rest. The only characters that made me feel like they're on equal footing with Rover is Galbrenna, to a smaller extent Hiyuki, and to an even smaller extent Frolova. And that's both in terms of their power levels as well as how they behave around Rover. This is a very common occurrence in Withering Waves. It has been criticized by many people, and not just myself, that Rover doesn't really feel like he's part of the ensemble, and more like the ensemble exists to orbit around Rover. Now, that's perfectly alright if Uwa was just a master love story, but it's clear it's trying to be something more considering all of these themes of...
And this is the problem, though. This is the problem. The only reason we're coming into this, we keep having this problem, or this particular problem with how the Rover's relationships with other characters in the cast and how it's presented and how it feels versus what they're trying to tell us, is because if y'all remember at the start of Withering Waves in the beta, from what I found out, in the beta of Withering Waves, the CN player base had an issue with the fact that the female characters were hostile towards the main character Rover. So the writers retroactively changed that so that they can be more caring and welcoming towards the Rover. Because let's be real, at the beginning of this game, it was Waifu Collector. It was Power Fantasy. The male Power Fantasy, which I'm gonna say this right now, objectively, that's not a bad thing. The male Power Fantasy is not objectively a bad thing in the slightest. I hate when people try to paint it as if it's a bad thing. But the thing is, though, it can become a bad thing if you're trying to tell a story that's like, oh, we're all together, friends forever type shit, But like you haven't been presenting your story like that since the start. Actually, you've been presenting your story in a very different light, and only now started shifting into that. So we can't truly buy into this whole, oh, this is a friends forever type story, lock in twin, because it was never presented in that way to begin with. And every time you've done it to present the story in that way, it's always come off as hollow. There's no real emotional weight behind it. It's lacking. It's missing its oomph. Something don't feel right. It's missing something. You see what I'm saying?
Of camaraderie, shared struggle, and people standing together against impossible odds. So if that is the...
Literally, Natlan's Act 4. For those of you who play Genshin Impact, Natlan Act 4 literally embodies everything that Withering Waves keeps trying to be with this whole, oh, we're together, this camaraderie shit, right? Literally. Act 4 of Natlan for Genshin Impact symbolizes that in its wholeheartedness by having all the heroes from all the tribes in Natlan come together and be like, it's time to activate the Older Resurrection because we're getting our asses handed to us right now. There is death and destruction all across Natlan. Niggas are dead. The majority of people don't even be brought back to life. The people who did die, before the Older Resurrection was activated, they stayed dead permanently. The only ones who got to come back were niggas that were around and like barely hanging on to life the moment the Older Resurrection started, or niggas who were still alive when the Older Resurrection started. So in case they did die, guess what? At least they would come back to life thanks to the Older Resurrection being activated at its time that it was started. Right? Throughout Act 4 of Natlan, I feel the camaraderie. I feel the danger. I feel the weight behind the emotion of the characters, from NPCs to dead NPCs to playable characters. This is a truly dire situation. We getting our asses handed to us and shit is really hitting the fan.
The story that Wu wants to tell, then other characters need to feel more capable, more active, and more connected to each other outside of the rover, much like how Gurren Lagann developed its character relationships and how they kept older characters relevant throughout the whole journey. I do think 3.x has started improving this though. Bringing older characters back more often is a good sign, and I genuinely hope that continues. But until the story consistently lets the rest of the cast stand on equal footing with Rover, lines like this won't have much of an effect on me other than, sounding pretty. I wanted to structure this video this way because I wanted to give you an inside look at how I approach these stories. I wasn't trying to prove my first reaction right. If anything, I tried to challenge it, look at the game's own evidence, and see whether my criticism still held up. It did in some places, while in others not so much. That's why
I do the same thing. I know a lot of people look at my channel and think, oh, I'm just a Hoyo shill or some bullshit, and be like, oh, any criticism I give, I'll defend Hoyoverse as a whole across the board, this and third. Like, no. Right? And even when people try to claim I don't play Withering Waves, but actively fucking play the fucking story to be caught up with it so that I can have my own personal takes to give about it, regardless if people agree with it or disagree with it, right? I come into Wuwa's story with an open mind. I at least give it the respect to come into it with an open mind, right? Just to see, oh, how I'm gonna feel about this story. Maybe that, right? Before I even did this reaction, I decided I was gonna play the story first to get my own feelings about it and this and the third. And naturally, and unfortunately for the devs who write the fucking story, they made me come to the conclusion that was similar to what Vincent came to. And I can feel it on a baseline once they started doing certain things. I'm like, hold up, we didn't spend enough time with this character for this. Or this character didn't get enough screen time for this as well. Or they feel like, man, this character should have, cooked more in the kitchen before we got to this moment. Or this moment is happening way too fast. We just should have waited out a little longer before we did this. You see what I'm saying? Right, because I've been getting really into critique videos of pieces of media. A lot, I ain't gonna lie, I've been listening to a lot of critique videos towards if anybody has ever seen the show called Has Been Hotel, the indie animation that got picked up by Amazon and A1 Pictures or whatever, right? The writer for that, she's a fucking hack writer. She does not know how to write. Her shit is literal fan fiction, bad fan fiction, trying to use the Bible and just Christianity and even Catholicism or Judaism as the foundation for her story writing, but yet she bullshits around with it, and if she doesn't actually do anything interesting with the religious teachings and just the religion that she's pulling from to make her little story, and then her story just comes off as blatant ass cheeks of someone who clearly does not understand the material that they are using for the foundation of their fictional media. And it's blatantly obvious. Right? And I come into and thanks to watching that, the critique videos of that, understand, and shoot, I even come to my own realization of criticisms that I'm like, man, yeah, if they did do this, we could have had this, that, and the third. Or maybe, wait a minute, let's spin this around. Maybe if they did this would have been better. This, that, and the third, right? It helps develop my critique juicing brain. And this doesn't mean I don't apply this to Genshin Impact. I do. It just Genshin Impact recently has not given me a reason to view it in that way because everything has been pretty solid, pretty hunky-dory. Nothing feels off at all. Everything feels like it's just lined up and it connects to each other.
Don't think the problem with Wuthering Waves is that it has no interesting ideas. It absolutely does. At its best, Wuwa's story feels like a puzzle full of fascinating pieces, but oftentimes these pieces don't quite fit together or outright contradict one another. And sometimes the emotional payoff depends on the audience filling in too much of the connective tissue themselves. There are
AKA the glue
things I like about it, but there are other aspects that just drag my enjoyment down significantly. Was this a good emotional climax for the story? Yes, I think it was. It went through all of the right beats from start to finish. The visuals, the music, the scale, and the feeling it was going for, it all worked. Now, all that Kuro has to do is keep up this emotional ambition while also respecting, or at least clearly communicating, their mechanics.
Maybe my Wi-Fi is lagging. That's probably why it's going so slow at this.
And players will only stand to gain from it. But that's going to be it for me. Let me know what your thoughts are on the anniversary patch story in the comment section down below. If you enjoy what I do, please consider...
I'm gonna go ahead and give it my like, because I already knew I was gonna agree with this video on the baseline because my own experience playing it. I don't think I have anything else to add. I gotta hurry to end this video because the bathroom calling. Anyway, y'all tell me how y'all feel about Wuwa's 3.3 story if you did indeed play it all the way in its fullness. At one point in the story, did you feel like there was something missing as you were playing it? Because I felt that shit immediately once we got to like the latter half of the fucking story. Shit most definitely was indeed missing. Anyway, I think that's all I got to say. Make sure you like, sub, turn on the notification bell, join my YouTube community Discord, links on my channel, check out my yapping topics and yapping reaction playlist, and check those videos out. They're a good watch if you want to watch, you know, some entertaining videos while you do other shit in the background and all that cool dandy stuff. I stream 5 gacha games, technically 6. I say with air quotes. Those being Genshin, Star Rail, Wuwa, Zenless, and Our Next Info, along with NTE. NTE has been on the back burner because, you know, I got to level up and shit like that before I continue to make story content. I play a handful of non-gacha games as well. Those being Gravity Rush 2, Ninja Gaiden 4, Stellar Blade, Fate, Samurai Remnant, and Tales of Berseria. So if you want to see me play those games here on my channel, just, you know, subscribe to the channel like I said before. Anyway, again, tell me how y'all feel about 3.3 story if you did play it as a Wuwa player, and tell me whether or not if I was off base with my takes I gave, and if he was off base with his takes. Also go check out Vincent's video, help this man get some more views on this video, because personally I feel like him having only 1.2k on his video is fucking criminal. It needs more, so go help him get more of that viewership. Anyway, that's all I have to say. This is KallaTheYapper signing out. A peace.